Two tails, one head. Yin yang. Three tails. Old yin. One tail, two heads. Yang yin. Two tails, one head. Yin yang. Two heads, one tail, yang yin. Two tails, one head, yin yang. In a short passage from Wen Tzu, Understanding the Mysteries, another great classic of Chinese Taoism containing teachings also attributed to the author of the Tao Te Ching. 98. Lao Tzu said, "The way can be used for weakness or for strength, for flexibility or for firmness, for passivity or for activity, for darkness or for light. It can be used to embrace heaven and earth. It can be used to respond to the times without fixed convention. Knowing it is shallow, not knowing it is deep. Knowing it is external, not knowing it is internal. Knowing it is coarse, not knowing it is fine. Knowing it is not knowing. Not knowing is knowing it. Who knows that knowing is not knowing, and not knowing is knowing? The way cannot be heard. What is heard is not it. The way cannot be seen. What is seen is not it. The way cannot be spoken. What is spoken is not it. Who knows that its form is not form? Therefore, when everyone knows that good is good, this is not good. Those who know do not say. Those who say do not know." "99. Wen Tzu asked, "Can people speak of the subtle?" Lao Tzu said, "Why not? But only if you know what words mean. Those who know what words mean do not speak with words. Those who struggle for fish get wet. Those who chase animals run. It is not that they like it. Therefore, ultimate words depart from words. Ultimate action departs from action. What people of shallow knowledge compete for is trivial. Words have a source, events have a leader. It is because contrivance has no knowledge that I do not claim to know." 100. Wen Tzu asked, "In acting for the sake of a nation, is law also involved?" Lao Tzu said, "When people are hauling a cart, they shout, 'Heave, ho!' And this in the rear also respond to it. And those in the rear also respond to it. This is a cry for stimulating the exertion of strength when pulling a cart. No body chanty can compare to it in meaning. In governing a nation, there are conventions, which are not a matter of ornate rhetoric. When laws proliferate ostentatiously, there are many bandits and rebels." 101. Lao Tzu said, "In the way there is no correct, and yet it can be used for correctness. For example, you need forests for lumber, so lumber is secondary to forest. Forest is secondary to clouds and rain. Clouds and rain are secondary to negative and positive energies. Negative and positive energies are secondary to harmony. Harmony is secondary to the way. The way is what is called a stateless state, an image with nothing in it. Unfathomable, yet by it the world can be molded and transformed." 102. Lao Tzu said, "When sages set up education and execute policies, they must observe the end and the beginning and see the benefits created. When the people know writing, their virtue deteriorates. When they know calculation, their benevolence deteriorates. When they know contracts, their trust deteriorates. When they know machines, their substantiality deteriorates. A lute does not make any sound, but its 25 strings each resound through it. An axle does not turn itself, but the 30 spokes of a wheel revolve by virtue of its power. The strings of a lute must have a balance of relaxation and tautness in order to play a tune. A car needs a balance of work and rest in order to travel far. What enables there to be sound is itself soundless. What makes turning possible does not itself turn. Rulers and ruled are on different paths. What is easy to govern soon loses order. Those whose rank is high and path is great are followed. Those whose work is important but whose path is small are unlucky. Petty virtue spoils justice. Petty goodness spoils the way. Petty intellectualism spoils government. Cruel strictness harms virtue. Great rectitude is not threatening, so the people are easy to lead. Perfect government is easygoing, so the lower classes do not steal. Perfect loyalty returns to simplicity, so the people have no hypocrisy. Primary hexagram, the bottom trigram or inner trigram will be read as solid, broken, broken. This is the trigram. Zen, thunder. Thunder is shock, upheaval, and the spark of the new. In old Chinese belief, thunder slept in the earth over winter and erupted from it in spring, awakening living things into new growth. Thunder is our basic drive for renewal. He inspires initiative and decisive action. He is the stimulus that sets things in motion. He is the eldest son in the trigram family, the first connection of heaven, potential, with earth, realization. Yang makes itself known here, emerging into the field and beginning to grow. Thunder belongs to the east and to spring. The top trigram is Li, light and fire, solid, broken, solid. Li, fire and light. Li is fire and light, both inner and outer. As an inner light, she is consciousness at its most lucid and unclouded, holding things together in the mind, perceiving their differences and connections, and discerning the underlying patterns of relationship. And as well as vision, Li is the light that makes things visible, the power to cast light on things, spreading clarity and the awareness of order. Li is the middle daughter, living in the south, the region of midsummer and the burning sun. That will give us a hexagram of fire and light above thunder, which is hexagram 21. Once our bottom trigram transforms, this old yin will transform to young yang. So it'll give us solid, solid, broken. That trigram is dewy, lake, or marsh. Dewy is lake and marsh, abundant energy that teems with life. She is the impulse to communicate, share, and exchange, and delights in both inner and outer conversation. She brings things into circulation and gives them voice. This is the sheer enjoyment of participating in life to the full, expressing ourselves and hearing others, and satisfying our desires. Lake is the youngest daughter, spirit of the fertile west and of autumn. That will give us lake or marsh below fire and light for our secondary hexagram or supporting hexagram. Which is hexagram 38. How our primary, secondary hexagram and changing lines all relate to one another to answer our question we bring to the oracle or the I Ching. That question having the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. We'll understand the answer to that when we understand how the parts of our reading work together. The key to understanding a reading is to know your way around its main components, how they fit together, and the different roles they play. If your reading includes changing lines, then you will need to understand primary hexagram, relating hexagram, and changing lines together. The two hexagrams in conversation with one another map out your whole answer. The primary hexagram shows you quite directly what your answer involves. The relating hexagram generally describes what the answer is about for you. It sets the primary hexagram in a broader context, an influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. If the two hexagrams map out a landscape for you, then the changing lines stick a pin in that map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They are the immediate answer to your question. As the most specific, focused part of a reading, their message always takes precedence over all other elements. For example, the primary hexagram might describe a reassuringly secure situation, but a changing line could warn how insecure your position is within it. We'll start out by reading from the Taoist I Ching, written by I-ming in 1796 as a Taoist adept, and Thomas Cleary has translated it. Hexagram 21. Has a really succinct definition in the front. Biting through, investigating things and finding out principles. And then 38, our supporting hexagram. Disharmony. Focus on externals requires inner emptiness to restore harmony. Now getting into the readings. Biting through. Biting through is developmental. It is beneficial to administer justice. Explanation. Biting through has the meaning of the mouth closing when eating something. In the body of the hexagram, the yangs on the top and bottom symbolize lips. The three yins symbolize teeth, and the yang in the middle represents something in the mouth. Also, the qualities of the hexagram are fire, luminous, above, and thunder, active, below. acting with unfailing clarity, acting only after clear understanding. It has the meaning of action that is not in vain. Therefore, it is called biting through. This hexagram represents the study of investigating things and finding out principle. It follows on the previous hexagram of overseeing. In overseeing, 2 yangs oversee 4 yins, whereby to advance yang and gather medicine. However, the medicinal substances have different degrees of gravity and energy. The firing process has intervals of time. The slightest miss can produce a tremendous loss. So this work of finding out principle is indispensable. Excellence or inferiority in learning to comprehend essence and life is all a matter of finding out principle. Understanding 1 part, you can practice 1 part. Understanding 10 parts, you can practice 10 parts. If you know essence but not life, or know life but not essence, or know striving but not non-striving, or know non-striving but not striving, or know the medicinal substances but not the firing process, or know the start but not the finish, this is all incomplete investigation of principle, which will inevitably result in failure of practice. If you want to act on something, you should first understand it. First understanding, then acting, all actions will be as you will. This is why biting through, using action within understanding, is developmental. Action with clarity is always based on understanding. Its development and fruition may be symbolized by the administration of justice. Nothing in the world is harder to administer than justice. If the true conditions of justice are not clear, right is considered wrong and wrong is considered right. Arbitrarily applying penalties, the calamity extends to the innocent, mistakenly injuring essence and life. Practice of the Tao is like administering justice. Discerning true and false, right and wrong, is like the judge deciding good and bad. Getting rid of falsehood and keeping truth so as to preserve essence and life is like the justice administration rewarding the good and punishing the bad, so as to alleviate the burden of injustice. When you investigate and find out true principle, it is clear in the mind and evident in practice. Fully realizing essence and perfecting life, it is unfailingly developmental and beneficial. And then supporting hexagram 38, disharmony. Disharmony. A small matter will turn out all right. Explanation. Disharmony means mutual opposition. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is fire, luminous, below is lake, joyous. Joy arises inside. Illumination is used outside. Rejoicing in what is not to be rejoiced in, bringing to light what is not to be brought to light. Joy and light are not appropriate, so it is called disharmony. This hexagram represents conciliation and adjustment when yin and yang are separated. It follows on the previous hexagram of concealment of illumination. Concealment of illumination has a meaning of true illumination being obscured. Then artificial understanding emerges. Discriminating consciousness takes charge of affairs, following what it desires, shedding light on the external without illumining the inward. One's essence is thus disturbed. Life is shaken, and one is separated from the Tao. This is where disharmony comes from. However, though disharmony is disharmony, there is still a way to bring about union. Even though the light of consciousness is focused on externals, if one can empty the mind, one can thereby restore light within. Even though desires arise inwardly, if one can fill the belly, one can thereby sweep desires aside. When illumination is restored and desires swept out, The spirit is settled and feelings are forgotten. Then the barrier separating yin and yang is penetrated, and disharmony can be reconciled. Therefore, a small matter will turn out all right. A small matter refers to yin. When the human mentality has been doing things for a long time, and the mind of Tao has been buried away, the great matter is already gone. Now, if you want to achieve unification, it is necessary first to dismiss the human mentality. After that, the mind of Tao will arise. Only after the mind of Tao has been restored will a great matter be auspicious. When right in the midst of disharmony, it is sufficient to seek to avoid the human mentality ruining things. How can one dare hope great matters turn out well? This is spoken of in terms of a small matter turning out all right. We'll go back and read our changing line 2 from our primary hexagram 21, biting through, which has the general context of the heart's perception, the emotional center where you make and feel connections. This being our most specific focused point of our reading, which trumps the rest of the reading, essentially. It's the most focused point. Biting skin, cutting off the nose, there is no blame. Explanation. If one is weak and not firm, and one's perception of principle is not yet true, one gets only the surface skin and does not yet get the deeper gristle. If one is in a hurry to practice principles that are not truly understood, this will not only fail to help one's inner state, it will also harm one externally. This is like biting skin and cutting off the nose. The nose is that by which fragrance and odor are distinguished. When the mouth eats something, the nose smells it first. As the mouth does not know the flavor, though the nose can discern it, it is still of no use. It is fortunate if when one is weak, one is still balanced, and does not presume to practice as long as perception of principle is not yet true. Then one may be without blame. This is investigating principle without yet penetrating it. We'll read further commentary for our primary and secondary hexagrams, but not our changing lines. That doesn't show up in the back here. So keeping in mind that what we just read is the most focused part of our reading, we'll move on to commentary on 21. In the back, biting through. Fire above, thunder below. Thunder and lightning, biting through. Thus did the kings of yore clarify penalties and proclaim laws. Biting through is when the mouth closes in the process of eating something. Above is fire, below is thunder. The fire accompanying thunder is lightning. This is thunder and lightning in the same place. Thunder shakes things, lightning illumines them. Within punishment there is reward. Within killing there is vivifying. It is like when eating something the mouth must close. It does not move at random, and when it moves it discerns the flavor of the food. This is the image of biting through. What the kings of yore saw in this was that when violent and vicious people walk inescapably into the jaws of death, it is because they do not know there is criminal law. Therefore, they establish laws clarifying major and minor penalties so that people would know that they should not commit crime. When there were those who did not accept the rule of the kings and intentionally transgressed even though they knew the laws, the kings assessed the gravity of their offenses, proclaiming uniform laws so that people would know that law cannot be escaped. First informing people with clarifications, then punishing offenders with authority. Life and death are clear. Punishment and reward are both used. When those who execute the law do not impose unjust punishments, and those subject to the law accept the consequences of their deeds, there is no barrier between the two sides. This is represented as biting through. Penalties and laws were explained and established by ancient kings for the sake of the world and the livelihood of the people. Those who administer laws should emulate the ancient kings in first clarifying them before executing them, in order to avoid mistakenly injuring life. The people who have false ideas about attainment of the Tao, who are unable to first thoroughly examine its principles, but take up practice recklessly and get sidetracked in auxiliary methods, either clinging to emptiness or sticking to form, wishing to seek long life but instead hastening death, are like the criminals in the times of the ancient kings. They are chewing on nothing. They have nothing to get their teeth into. What is the benefit, in fact? And 38, disparity. Fire above, lake below. Above is fire, below is a lake, disparate. Thus are superior people the same yet different. Disparity means disjunction between one and another. Above is fire, below is lake. The nature of fire is to flame upward, while the nature of water is to flow downward. When the fire is above, it cannot warm the water, and when the water is below, it cannot extinguish the fire. Thus, though the fire and the lake water are in the same place, their natures are different. This is the image of disparity. What superior people see in this is that practitioners of the Tao should not fail to assimilate to others, yet should not be too much like others either. If they do not assimilate, they will startle and amaze the ignorant and ordinary people and will be disliked and suspected by others. If they become too similar, however, they will be caught up in their influence and fall into mundane feelings. Therefore, they are different in the midst of sameness. Emulating the way moisture permeates things, they merge with the ordinary world and harmonize their illumination, responding to people harmoniously, able to adapt without restriction, assimilating to everyone. Emulating the way fire lights things up, they clearly distinguish truth and falsity, dealing with people without confusion, inwardly autonomous, having extraordinary self-control. Outwardly the same, yet inwardly not the same, inwardly different, yet outwardly not different. They are thus able to be very much like other people, while at the same time very much different from other people. Outward sameness means going by worldly laws. Inward difference is practicing the principles of the Tao. This is what is meant by the saying, in cultivating practice one conforms and harmonizes, adapting to each individual situation as it is. Nobody can fathom such changes or see how one acts or lies hidden. I put in the description of each video a link to James Dekorne's website. He usually has really good stuff, but today I am going to see about if there's anything in these hexagrams that's worth notating from his compilation of various commentaries and his own editor's notes. He calls it discernment, our primary hexagram 21. Something which should be or has to be bitten through. This is essentially the legal hexagram. When asking about a man's intentions, he is probably married. D.F. Hook. Blofeld. This hexagram symbolizes lightning accompanied by thunder. This is in the image section. The ancient rulers, after making their legal code perfectly clear to all, enforced the laws vigorously. The firm and yielding lines more or less alternate, or the lower trigram can be regarded as filled with the power of thunderous force, while the upper trigram, representing beauty, is soft and yielding. Li, the upper trigram, stands for lightning as well as for fire, beauty, etc. I do not know what the ancient Chinese views on thunder and lightning were. It appears from this that they were regarded as two forces which, like steel and flint, emitted brilliance when brought into sharp contact with each other. A pair of trigrams, both with yielding centers, is not felt to be a good arrangement. That it nevertheless favors the process of the law may have been suggested to the writer of the text by the fact that the weak lines, morally weak people, are fully contained by the strong, prison walls, wardens, and so forth. In the image clearly, thunder and lightning biting through. Thus did the kings of yore clarify penalties and proclaim laws. Those who administer laws should emulate the ancient kings in first clarifying them before executing them in order to avoid mistakenly injuring life. Leg, in the commentary section, discernment means literally union by gnawing. The figure consists of undivided lines in the top, bottom, and fourth places, giving the image of open jaws with something in them being gnawed. When the object has been bitten through, the upper and lower jaws come together in union, hence, union by gnawing. Remove the obstacles to union, and high and low will meet together in understanding. The force exerted by gnawing suggests the idea of legal constraints. The equal division of the dynamic and magnetic lines is seen by taking them in pairs, though the order of the first pair is different from the other two. The magnetic fifth line is the ruler of the hexagram, indicating that judgment is tempered by leniency. Cheng Tzu says that thunder and lightning are always found together, and hence their trigrams go together to give the idea of union intended in discernment. One trigram symbolizing majesty and the other intelligence. Notes and paraphrases. The image portrays the connection between cause and effect, where consequences are always based on the inexorable laws of nature. To bite is to comprehend, and to bite through is to make distinctions. The top and bottom lines of the hexagram represents the upper and lower jaws, and both bear images of restriction and punishment. Each of the lines between them portrays some version of biting through flesh. Hence the jaws define the general problem, and the teeth differentiate the details. And this is a quote from Jung in Letters. The symbol of losing teeth has the primitive meaning of losing one's grip because under primitive circumstances and in the animal kingdom, the teeth and mouth are the gripping organ. If one loses teeth, one loses the grip on something. Now this can mean a loss of self-control, etc. The English word grip is contained in the German word begriff, conception or notion. The Latin word conceptio means the same, i.e., catching hold of something, having a grip on something. In I Ching symbolism, the ancient kings are always synonymous with spiritual authority. Analogous to gods or cosmic forces, their laws are like the laws of karma or of nature, inexorable in their outcome. Therefore, the punishment theme in the hexagram warns us that a lack of discernment in the matter at hand has built-in penalties, i.e., get the message or suffer the consequences. And this is from P.F. Case in the Book of Tokens. Behold, sin and punishment are one, and the fire of punishment is the fire that refines my works. Even in the sinner I am the actor, and I, too, am the sufferer in the experience of punishment. To receive this hexagram without changing lines indicates a need to make some important distinctions in the matter at hand. Figure it out might make a good alternate title at such times. Cleary's Taoist note on the image, those who administer laws should emulate the ancient kings in first clarifying them before executing them in order to avoid mistakenly injuring life, is a clear admonition to get all of your facts straight before proceeding with your inquiry. That you don't know or understand something is implied. Suggestions for meditation. The 21st hexagram turned upside down becomes the 22nd. The message for the superior man and the image of each concerns the enforcement of law. What is the relationship between discernment and persona in such a context? The component trigrams of these two figures also make up hexagrams number 55, expansion of awareness, and number 56, transition. The messages for the superior man in each of these figures also relate to litigation. Why? What do the 4 hexagrams suggest about the nature of the work? And then we will look up his hexagram 38 as well. Just see if there's anything nice in here. He calls it mutual alienation. Other titles might be opposition, the symbol of strangeness and disunion, the estranged, polarizing, alienation, distant from, perversion, disharmony, separated, contradiction, estrangement, incongruity. In the judgment, we have a quote from Ritzema/Karcher, one of the commentaries. Polarizing, small affairs significant. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of things that are connected but should not join. It emphasizes that putting things in opposition while acknowledging their essential link is the adequate way to handle it. And let's just go to the commentary here. Confucius/Leg. In mutual alienation, we see fire ascending and water descending. We see 2 sisters living together whose wills move in opposite directions. However, the lower trigram of cheerfulness is attached to the upper trigram of clarity, and the magnetic 5th line is responded to by the dynamic 2nd line. These are signs that there can still be good fortune in small matters. Heaven and earth are separate and apart, but the work which they do is the same. Male and female are separate and apart, but with a common will, they seek the same object. There is a diversity between the myriad classes of beings, but there is an analogy between their several operations. Great indeed are the phenomena and the results of this condition of disunion and separation. Leg. Mutual alienation shows a condition in which disunion and mistrust prevail. The hexagram teaches how this state of affairs may be overcome in small matters and the way prepared for the cure of the whole system. The commentators suggest that the condition symbolized here is a necessary sequel to the regulation of the family in the preceding hexagram. The Confucianist editors observe that in many hexagrams we have 2 daughters dwelling together, but that only in this and number 49 is attention called to it. The reason is that in these 2 diagrams, the sisters are the 2nd and 3rd daughters, while in the others one of them is the eldest, whose place and superiority are fixed, so that between her and either of the others there can be no division or collision. The lesson in the Confucian commentary is not unity in diversity, but union with diversity. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. In resolving disputes, begin with their least controversial aspects. The superior man respects alternative points of view. Turn the hexagram of family upside down and you get the hexagram of mutual alienation. The opposite of family unity is estrangement, which combined with the idea of polarity suggests the kind of energetic pushing away one feels when 2 horseshoe magnets are matched to the same poles. Despite this opposition, however, every line deals positively with the situation. There's not one image in the hexagram that doesn't intimate an eventual resolution. The 38th hexagram lays even more emphasis than usual on the relationships, polarities, existing between its correlate lines. This suggests that interconnections outrank any superficial estrangement. The mutual alienation, then, is not a permanent condition. It represents more of a challenge than a disaster. All polarity is a potential energy to accomplish useful work. And in this hexagram, the polarities are more than usually available for this purpose. This doesn't mean that the work here is necessarily easy, just that it offers a major opportunity for growth. And then a quote from R.P. Cluft, Hypnotherapeutic Crisis Intervention in Multiple Personality. A crisis develops when some pressure or event creates a state of uncomfortable disequilibrium which fails to respond to usual defenses and coping mechanisms. It involves danger with both a considerable risk for worsening and opportunity for growth, with enhancement of insight, mastery, and self-esteem. The patient should be educated to understand his situation and help to see that painful episodes may prove to be a part of a constructive process and are not proof of a dire outcome. Going back to Hexagram 21 to read the changing line 2, which is the heart center where you make and feel connection. That's the general context. Blofeld says, gnawing flesh so that the nose is hidden in it, no error. The meaning of this line is not at all obvious. The Chinese additional commentaries take it to mean that we may do a little harm to our own interests, but that we shall not deserve blame for what happens. Wu says, he bites through a skin, burying his nose in it, etc. This makes it easy for him to judge the case, like biting through a soft skin. The judgment seems to have cautioned mildly not to overjudge an easy case. In the commentary, Legge says, line 2 is appropriately magnetic in a central place. Therefore, her action should be effective. This is shown by her biting through the soft flesh, an easy thing. Immediately below, however, is a strong offender represented by the first line. Before he will submit, it is necessary to bite off his nose. Punishment is the rule, and it must be continued and increased until the end is secured. Chang Tzu says, being mounted on the dynamic first line means punishing a strong and vehement man, when severity is required, as is denoted by the central position of the line. Notes and paraphrases. Hsu. The hardened sinner must be punished severely to secure the desired ends. Although indignation often goes too far in meting out punishment, it may still be just. Wing says, punishment and retribution come swiftly and thoroughly to the person who continues in wrong behavior. Even though it may seem overly severe, it will effectively bring about reform. Finally, there is no mistake in this. Editor. This is an interestingly ambiguous line which admits of more than one interpretation. I have always taken the hexagram as symbolic of the process of differentiation, so the following associations come from that perspective. Namely, bite, namely to get your teeth into something is to get a grip on it, to comprehend it. Flesh, meat, food, nourishment, the raw material, data or experience of the situation at hand. Soft, easily bitten and penetrated, and easy discrimination. Nose, intuition, subtle discrimination, as, namely, I smell a rat. The various translators indicate that the nose is either injured or buried in the meat, suggesting that the intuitive faculty is damaged or obscured by an overly easy act of mental discrimination. A simplistic comprehension goes too far, but since the idea of no blame is attached to the line, this seems to be a natural consequence of the situation. A syllogism might go like this. Drunk drivers are bad. George is a drunken driver. Therefore, George is bad. This is the easy discrimination. The subtle discrimination is that George, normally a modest drinker, was required by his embassy job to drink toasts with the Russian ambassador and he miscalculated his capacity to hold his liquor. The easy distinction overrides the subtle one because the offense is serious enough to require a severe punishment. The line can sometimes suggest the squabbles of lawyers and the differences between the spirit and the letter of the law. A quote from F. Hartman, Paracelsus, Life and Prophecies. The world of the soul and the realms of the spirit can only be known to him whose inner senses are awakened to life. The things of the body are seen through the instrumentality of the body, but the things of the soul require the power of spiritual perception. Then he has an A, B, and C, all kind of summing up different ways you could take this changing line. A, an oversimplification is better than a total illusion. Half-true is better than totally false. B, suggests a conclusion based upon simplistic reasoning. You only see the obvious. Seek the subtle hidden within the obvious. C, there is more to the subject than meets the eye. Once again, that was our changing line we just read, so that was the most focus point of the reading. And we will now see what Hilary Barrett says about all this. 21. Yeah, I've put links in all my videos to James Dekorne's website. He often will say he has practiced consulting the oracle often, and it shows in his editor's notes. But I would highly recommend checking that website out, especially since he not only has his editor's notes and things like that, he also cites multiple commentaries for all of it. So you can get kind of a look really easily to cross-reference the various translations of the hexagrams. Hexagram 21, biting through, our primary hexagram. Key questions. What must you do to get to the truth? How can you become more effective? Oracle. Biting through, creating success. Fruitful to use legal proceedings. It's time to bite through to the truth, cracking the situation open like a bone between your teeth, using the power of a diviner to open up the smooth surfaces of things and penetrate to the essence. Resting content with appearances may be easier, but it is no longer enough. Deal with obstacles as you would something tough in your food. Bite and gnaw your way through until your teeth meet. It will help to use the determination of an investigator or a judge intent on restoring the world to good order, who will let nothing stand between them and the truth. Image. Thunder and lightning biting through. The ancient kings brought light to punishments and enforced the laws. Thunder and lightning come together like action and insight. The ancient kings who had the task of keeping the world in good order understood that punishment and enforcement alone were not enough. There had to be light. We need to see and understand the laws of life in order to have insight into the connection between what we do and what happens to us. Punishing experience comes like a bolt of lightning that jolts us into recognizing how we live in relationship to those laws. When you can feel pain, you know that you are awake and your circulation is flowing. Sequence. Biting through follows from hexagram 20, seeing. Capable of seeing, hence there is a place for uniting, and so biting through follows. Biting through means uniting. Once you allow everything to come into view, you can be sure of grasping the whole situation, rather than focusing too narrowly and failing to see the real obstacle. So when you can see, you have the possibility of reaching a specific truth or a particular result. Pair. Biting through forms a pair with hexagram 22, beauty. Biting through means eating. Beauty is without color. There's a time for reaching the truth and a time for expressing it. Biting through, you take the situation into yourself, chew it over, and digest it. Beauty will bring out its pure, plain essence. And then she calls hexagram 38, our supporting hexagram, opposing. Key questions. What if the difference were not a threat? How could this tension be creative? If you can't see eye to eye, what can you see? Oracle. Opposing. Small affairs, good fortune. Opposing describes irreducible differences, desires, motivations, and especially ways of seeing that diverge from one another. Opposing people see differently even when they're looking at the same scene. They are utterly strange to each other, as if they came from different planets. With an inner state of opposing, you contain mutually contradictory impulses, like two siblings under one roof, or see from two angles at once. You might see things not only for what they are, but also for what they mean, as if they were omens. In small affairs, this kind of difference of view means good fortune. It's a challenge, a source of comedy, or a creative stimulus. In matters of great personal importance, though, where people's sense of identity is threatened by a different way of seeing, it will stir up survival instincts and trigger conflict. If you can scale matters down to small affairs, it becomes much easier to give space to both visions. Image. Fire above, lake below, opposing. A noble one both harmonizes and separates. The elements of this situation are fire and water. You can't blend them together into a compromise, but kept safely apart, they create harmony. The sun sparkles on the lake, the light of awareness shines on the inner currents of emotion. A noble one lives with opposition, simply by understanding what harmonizes and what is to be held apart. Sequence. Opposing follows from hexagram 37, people in the home. When the way of the home is exhausted, you naturally turn away, and so opposing follows. There comes a point when you can no longer find yourself as a part of a group. You want to assert your separate identity or explore something new, outside the safe and familiar walls. And then going back and reading, changing line 2 of hexagram 21, our primary hexagram. Keeping in mind the general context is the heart's perception, where you make and feel connections. Biting into meat so your nose disappears, not a mistake. A new, different flavor of food is available, something outside your usual realm of experience. Instead of sniffing at what you're offered cautiously to compare it with what you know, or decide whether this is wholesome, or even whether it's what you were looking for, you simply get stuck in. And you do so with such sheer appetite that you lose the use of your sense of smell, of discrimination altogether. This may seem incautious, trusting too much and planning too little. However, freely immersing yourself in the full experience without formality, demands, or expectations is certainly a very direct, immediate way to gain insight into its nature and whether or not it is nourishing for you. Somewhere, there it is.
to read a chapter from the Tao Te Ching, or possibly a few. Let's try to see which one. Let's do that. 69.
There is a saying among soldiers, I dare not make the first move, but would rather play the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but would rather withdraw a foot. This is called marching without appearing to move, rolling up your sleeves without showing your arm, capturing the enemy without attacking, being armed without weapons. There is no greater catastrophe than underestimating the enemy. By underestimating the enemy, I almost lose what I value. Therefore, when the battle is joined, the underdog will win.